We're going to get going here. I'll call to order the select board meeting for Tuesday, May 20, is it May 22nd?
Yeah.
Gosh, 2018. We have a quorum. We're going to start off reviewing transportation and environment. Rob is not here to be here for the environment or transportation. First off, Jen, I really like the way that it was all set up this time versus last time. Libby or whoever.
Yeah.
Oh, you did that? Well, it's great.
Thank you.
I understood it, what happened and then what was changed or the feedback. So thank you there. For transportation, do you want to start off
Sure.
with that, Libby?
All right, so our transportation work group has Matt on it, and Mike Burns was present, Rob, I think, was present, myself, and Janet, and
Chief
Chuck.
Pittman, was he there?
And Chief Pittman, yes, I think he was there. He and Rob are both away this week. In any event, so going through the goals, what we didn't change. Let me back up. So there are two transportation goals, as you know. The first one, we had no changes proposed to either the broad strategies or the data and research, and we just had a comment that the, quote, other parking group is already working on this goal. That's an internal staff group that's working towards the demand parking management program. That's a mouthful, but, you know, the paid parking program. And we're working with Remain's consultant, Jason Schreiber. We have a meeting, Jason's in on that as well, Bridges. We have a meeting scheduled with him sometime soon, next couple of weeks.
June 6th.
Thank you, to start going through what we need to focus on to get the goal implemented of the paid parking.
And Libby, and he's pretty much just kind of walking us through this process.
Yes.
So we keep moving forward.
Yep, and we be sure to identify all the things we need to identify in order to make sure we have the correct number of resources and where they are and who does what and this and that sort of thing.
So has the transportation group, have we delegated, I'm just trying to understand the structure, so raw strategy number one, we've got a subgroup of a subgroup that's kind of working on that, and do they have a charge to
It's more of a staff group to determine a sort of a timeline and an implementation plan and a
I don't
cost
care whose
and all
group it
that.
is, I just think it's good that, it's a staff group, that's fine, but I'm trying to,
If I could throw one thing in, I think we got lucky here, Jim, because remember when we talked about this at the select board meeting and Matt came up with all those,
yeah.
right? So that group started from there.
Okay.
And then we came up with a goal that happened to be just what this group is
Oh,
already
good,
doing.
no, that's great. So my point is, can we delegate that work to this group for the time being? Or do we just want to let them, I don't know, I'm just trying to understand.
I think it's
kind of what
sort of
we're doing.
inherently already delegated.
Yeah.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
that's great. So I just
Yeah.
want to put that out there so everybody understands that.
Thank
And then
you.
we'll have a chance to weigh in when it comes back.
Yeah,
But
good.
one of the important things that I mentioned at the meeting, and I'll mention here, is this should be based, it should be measured on we should be measuring the roads,
Yeah.
and there should be data, and this should be sort of philosophically policy, like it should be set up that we're gonna do 85% in the different areas, and we monitor it.
Okay.
Not just guess. This should be policy, not politics. So,
Okay.
which we've laid out, so.
So just for my reference, is there a name we can call them? So we know when we're referring to them?
The downtown working group.
I don't-
Men walking.
Parking demand management work group.
We're just thinking, because I get confused about, so that's great. And they'll report back to this group or to the other?
To us.
To the select
Yeah.
board? Okay.
The second goal, to complete at least one key sidewalk route from Mid-Island to the ferries. We had just a couple of minor feedback items. Under broad strategies, we thought we should just add in to examine opportunities to place overhead wires underground if and when that is able to happen. And under data and research, we thought that the Mid-Island area plan should be reviewed and the Old South Road corridor study to be sure we're not missing any issues that should be covered in this goal.
And this group is going to do all that?
We haven't assigned
Okay.
anything yet,
Okay,
but I think that remains to be discussed by the board as to who's
Great.
going to do what going forward. We have a tentative third goal.
And could I-
That-
So if you need additional resources, you could come back to this group, or the select board group, and ask, tell them, yeah, we'd like to do this, but we need additional resources or a consultant or something.
Yeah, and,
Okay.
yeah, again, I think the board at some point will be going through all of these goals to
Okay.
determine that, or staff will, with staff assistance. The proposed third goal is by 2021, present recommendations to decrease the use of privately owned vehicles by some percentage, which we did not come up with yet. We went a little bit around about this particular goal, and our intent was more of a how to get people out of their cars goal. And we sort of narrowed it down to this with 3 broad strategies and a couple of data and research items that are shown here. So we present this for discussion, I think. I don't know if anybody else on the group wants to comment. I think it started with Matt. And I think the effort here was to sort of go back to how do we, is a way to lessen traffic congestion not to have so many cars. And so how do we not have so many cars? We get people not to use cars so much. And so that's a little bit how it started. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much.
I like the strategy of looking at getting people out of the cars as the supreme goal that all of these are trying to do. The reason you want to improve infrastructure between Mid-Island and downtown is to give people nice options, and that's definitely one of the 3 strategies to get people out of the car. The second strategy is economics, and that's the first goal, parking management. The third way is also have a conducive land use strategy, and we already have that, the town and country development, where we incentivize densities around bus routes and in the existing infrastructure, and then the conservation areas are out in the country, and they're not developed, so they don't contribute to sprawl. So those are the 3 strategies, get people out of the car, and 2 of these goals already inform that. So it seems very healthy. I think Libby's trying to not talk about some of the goofy things we talked about. Because we did try to think of outside the box transportation strategies that also help people get people out of the car and take away from parking demand. I'm feeling kind of hesitant to mention some of those myself, but there are some state-of-the-art stuff that are very experimental technologies that we did kind of kick around and laugh about.
Like shocking systems to actually get people out of your car?
That's actually not a bad one.
That one wasn't brought up, but.
Okay, so there's gonna be more goofy than that.
But they're not really goofy, I don't think, but the broad strategies and the broad strategies, I guess, is what we kind of came down to. I'm looking at my notes here, but I'm not really remembering what the other goofier ones were.
Hyperloop. I think VIA was the private rideshare strategy. Was operated more like public transportation, somewhat fixed route, but deviated. It's like an Uber
Yeah.
/ public transportation hybrid. Exactly. If anybody's familiar with VIA and that model, I think that's what Matt talked about.
The what
It's-
model?
VIA is a company.
That's all right, I'll look it up.
Okay.
And my guess is that's where we're gonna end up going once the year-round bus service is a miserable mess, January, February, March, and no one's using it. I think we're gonna end up having to, my guess, if we want it to be successful, we'll have to go to an algorithm like a VIA, and people will punch in, and then the bus will drive around. And it might even be a town bus, it might not be NRTA, it might be private guys driving around, and we, as a town, do the algorithm, and have the algorithm and the thing online, so people can have it pick them up as need be.
Yeah.
So that's my guess, because I think January, February, March is gonna be really slow, and when that's happened before, we've closed down services, so I think this might be a step in between closing it down, but that's a guess.
Libby, we did kind of kick around a 4th goal that DPW and planning liked a lot, and that was the relieving of bottlenecks at some intersections. And we feel kind of strong because some of our capital projects are leading to capital requests going to FinCom, and if those capital requests don't align with strategic goals,
Yeah,
we
I
make
think-
a hard time with that.
Yep, we ended up saying that we would leave those as pending projects, because the 3 intersections are pending projects, and there may have been a 4th that.
The old South Road corridor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think we were just thinking that those were sort of underway anyway.
So is that, you're saying that's a potential 4th broad strategy or a 4th broad goal?
goal is to alleviate bottlenecks,
A big goal.
priority bottlenecks.
Big
on the
goal.
road.
Well, I didn't, my notes don't reflect that our group agreed on that, but we did discuss it.
We did discuss it.
Okay.
But we didn't put it forward as a goal, because again, I think we felt like it was already happening.
So is the purpose of, what's the purpose of our discussion about this now? To give this group feedback, to talk about it? I mean, I'm just asking Jason
Yeah, I think-
how we want to spend our time right now.
Well, I think we can decide if we want to have this as a goal, or we can say, this isn't what we worked on for 8 months. We can just take it and make it a strategy. We don't need it as a goal. I think we can figure that out. So we can just take it off, or we can make it a separate goal. But since I wasn't in that meeting, having Libby, Matt, and Mike, kind of lead the conversation on why do you think it should be a goal versus a strategy?
I think it came up as a goal. It came up as a third goal because it's sort of what Mike's saying, it's everything we're trying to do. But I think unless we tell people that that's our goal, that's what we're trying to do, I'm not sure that people will accept some of the other things or understand it. I think we should be right up front and saying we're trying to make it easy for you to get around the island without your car. It's the biggest complaint every year is what's happening with traffic. And you can't add 500 cars a year and think that, and even if you fix a couple intersections, think that traffic is gonna flow fine. It's not at 500 cars a year. So, so I think we have to start looking at the alternatives a lot more seriously and make people proud of that, make that what they wanna do,
Yeah.
so.
It's a great vision, and quite honestly, that aligns with the regional plan, the vision for that, and the rest of these goals kind of achieve that vision.
Exactly. But I think we have to sell that vision. That has to be in front of people. And we talked about it, and Libby goes, well, we're trying to get them out of their cars, and we were all like, yeah, that is what we're trying to do. So,
Is this?
So my memory isn't that good. I'm trying to remember the other, as we all know, we brainstormed a lot of goals when we were coming up with the transportation goals, and I know there were others that didn't, and we had to pick 2. So what were the other, could we look at our notes sometime and just go over what were the ones that didn't rise to the level of the top 2, and was this in there? And what other ones? And so for me, it would be nice to know, to be able to compare and contrast how does getting out of reducing privately owned vehicles compare in a rank order to the other ones that we decided not to choose. That's just my personal opinion.
Chuck, do you have those sticky notes?
Yeah, I do. I'm trying to read them.
Don and Greg, do you remember exactly what we talked about that day?
So, I do have the sticky notes. Implement the traffic demand management, achieve 85% utilization in town, implement, unfortunately, taxi rideshare, bus service,
those are the
direct
ones.
commuter shuffles, yeah.
So it's in the sidewalk,
Yeah.
in-town bike path, complete that. Direct commuter shuttles from Mid-Island to town with at least 80% utilization. Yeah, something auto dependency, that's probably me. Decrease auto
Decrease,
dependency,
yeah.
thank you, I can't read my own writing. And then these were parking management,
Oh, and then these are the stars, so the ones that got, these are the,
and the ones that got the
Right.
most stars.
okay,
Parking management got stars, sidewalk to Mid-Island,
yeah,
and...
In-town bike path.
Yeah, in-town bike path.
those got 3 or
And this
more.
got 3 established direct commuter shuttles from Mid-Island to
Oh,
town.
I missed those, okay.
Yeah.
So it doesn't sound like the decreased privately owned vehicles was even on a sticky note.
No, but I think, and it's interesting, this is where having sort of outside eyes and ears look at our goals, is that I think, like, this is really a very succinct version of, I think, what our vision was. And even listening to those are almost the things you would do to start to achieve getting people out of their cars. So it's one of those, and it came up in environment as well. I hesitate to say, without having gone through our whole process, adding a whole nother goal. but at the same time, if there's a way to capture this, because I do think this is kind of what our vision was, and then we jumped into looking at ways to do it. So, and I don't know how that would, even rename, I don't know how we would do that, but I do like having this there, and I think it's important, and I think it's a good way to frame what we're trying to do, but I don't know if it was appropriate as like a third goal, because it didn't go through the process.
Well, I'm not that keen on, we can change the rules anytime we want, so in terms of having another goal, I'm fine with that. I just didn't know if, I just wanted to check this, is all I was asking.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point.
So I think you could actually take it up another level. It's really, how do we support mobility? Transportation, cars is only one aspect of that. Sidewalks is another, bicycles is another. So I think you're onto something, that this is more of an overarching and a goal to improve mobility across the island.
Because when I see decreased privately owned vehicles, I immediately think of the vehicle as a focus. And like, Libby and I have a meeting on Thursday, and she's asked to move the meeting out here because she would have a meeting at 10 o'clock. And I said, gee, I really don't want to get in my car and have to drive down there. I was going to hope that I could walk down to your office. So she changed, so she was, anyway, so just that, kind of.
Decision
Right.
making.
Yeah, or you could take the bus.
So for me, the trade-off is I don't want to use my car and I'd rather walk or something like that.
Well, there may be a better way to say it, a more, turn it around and make it positive. But, my view is that what we've spent the last 30 years doing is accommodating we've built bike paths, but we haven't, we didn't connect them to downtown, and the cars have sort of, they're parking on all the sidewalks, and they're riding all the other options are unsafe now. You can't ride a moped, you can't ride a bike with a family safely anymore. I think the emphasis has to switch to make all those other things safe. And, and instead of raising the price on the bus, once we earn enough money, the buses should be free. If you want to encourage things, you have to have a big vision to encourage those things. So that's why I think, I don't know how we do it, maybe can be switched positively instead of saying getting people out of their car. Maybe you can say you're trying to, increase alternatives, make it a positive statement.
Encourage.
Yeah.
Encourage, incentivize.
Yeah.
Your recommendations to incentivize non-private vehicle use.
Yeah, and if you look at, even your budget tells you priorities. If you look at our budget, the roads get a ton of money, and the other stuff sort of gets a little bit. It's getting a little better now, like Mike's done a good job the last couple cycles of trying to put more into those other items, but I think, that serves our priority. Our priorities have been moving more cars more quickly. We need to do other stuff, so.
If this was a goal, is this possible? I don't know, Libby or Mike, can we do this in addition to the other things? Is it feasible to consider this, to have those recommendations by 2021? If this was the goal as is?
Increased utilization of taxis and having free public transportation, is that what you're looking at?
Just if we were to add goal number 3 as is it achievable?
To get the recommendation.
Well, the only thing you really need to do is make a recommendation for how to decrease use of vehicles by, and I don't know what the X number percent is. I've been sharing with Matt what our mode split is and how New York City has the best use of public transportation. 30% of their population uses buses, public transportation to get to work. We're never going to hit that. But we could set it as a bar and try to hit it if you want to do that. I don't think it would be achievable.
Yeah.
But
Subway system.
we gotta set a bar somewhere. Right now, it's at like 1.6% of our public transportation used for work. We have a year-round bus now. That's going to increase.
Yeah.
If we're going to use Portland, Oregon, like a barometer for, they seem to be very successful. We actually have a better bike and walking rate than they do. But our public transportation is about a third of theirs. But now the bus is year-round. So maybe we set 6%. That's a little bit more than what Portland, Oregon has. To me, I think that would be a measure of success. If we had that X percent be 6%, and for public transportation. Like it's very specific to one particular mode, but I'm just trying to spitball at possible solutions for where to hang the bar and try to jump over it.
After listening to you just say that, I can visualize it better now, whether it's 5 or 6, and use these other examples, like whenever we get to 30,
Yeah,
because we don't have 13.
they're the best in the country, and we're never going to do that.
We don't have 13 million people who have no other choice, right?
Yeah.
But going to 5 or 6% and then saying, here's all the ways that we're trying to get that, which goal 1 and 2 will help some of that. But then what are the
Yeah.
other ones?
Yeah, I would even couple them together, taxis, Uber, and public transportation, and get 1% out of these multimodal forms. Maybe even couple together bike and walking, all these percentages. And then we have the American Community Survey, that's where we get all the data from. That's every so often that they come up with a new release. We can measure it as we go along.
You feel it's
How is
good?
our mode split?
You feel it's measurable, like it's true?
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Not just a, kind of a.
There's a degree of accuracy, obviously. So plus or minus X number of percentage. But it's something you can measure. It's the best we have to actually put a number to it. And did we achieve it? Yes. Did we achieve it? No. Couple them all together and just say multimodal mode split. Or you can say use of driving alone to get to work. Ours is like 65%, something like this, whereas Portland, Oregon's like 70%.
66.1 versus 70.4.
Yeah,
You're right
change
on.
it from 65, drive alone to get to work, to change it to 60. Because you have a shift to public transportation. Slice the pie that way and describe it that way.
Jim? what
So,
do you say?
you know, I'm trying to maybe not to try to be too provocative, but I think, I mean, as I've talked to people that are younger and have families, and I've said, hey, you know, year-round bus service, how cool is that? Isn't that great? They're like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna use that. I mean, you know, I was like, why? It's awesome. You know, saves the environment. As long as there are 2 or 3 cars in everybody's driveway, and they get out of the house, and they've got time is limited, and as long as they, you know, that's the easiest decision to make, is to get in your car and go someplace. I can confess that, and I think as an American, sometimes I think we have those rights. And when we moved here, I had 5 cars in my driveway, and I convinced myself that, you know, for this kind of trip, I think I'd like to take this car, or this kind of trip, I want to take that. That's an abomination, personally. I think I've come to that realization. And until, you know, and that's, I think that's, so maybe I go back to what Matt's saying, until we reduce the ability of people to make that choice every day, maybe that's communism, I don't know what, but people are going to big people are going to do that.
It's like communism, it's parking management strategies, is making it an economic disincentive to park downtown, and that'll impact your decision making.
Well, people will still get in their car and they'll still drive around and look for a parking space, because the decision isn't to, you know, I know I'm going to have a hard time finding a parking space, so I won't take the east. It's from leaving my house to getting into the car that's 50 feet away, versus I know so I think somehow it's reducing the ability for people to exercise that choice every day, somehow.
And I think what he's saying is, what Mike's saying, is if it was $40 to park your car at work all day downtown, or you could walk to the corner and take the bus for free, you would probably take the bus for free every day. And that, you know, and if you have a family and you can't, but you're not going to work with your whole family anyway. So if you take your family to the hockey rink or doing whatever, you're still gonna go shopping with your car. But when you wanted to go to work, or when you wanna go and spend 4 hours downtown for a movie or whatever, you might decide to do another mode. And how many of those how much of that can you encourage? I think that's sort of.
Yeah, and if the taxi is more affordable, like it's
Yeah.
cheaper than driving and paying for parking, then you're going to exercise that option. Or if it's comparable with a parking violation, you're going to, you know, it does affect your decision making. That's where I'm getting at with, like, if we have 65% that drive alone now, if we can get that to 60%, that 5% shift probably went to public transportation. We're going to go from 1% to 6%. And to me, that's a measure of success. Not everybody did it, but it's enough to where my gosh, it's impactful.
Yeah, I think that people will make that switch, and it can't be everybody, because there are many people who are in, like, the service industry, like caretakers, and that are driving around all day from place to place to place. But there's the people who are your bank tellers in town and your retail people that I don't know why anyone wouldn't just not want to deal with the hassle.
Okay.
I mean, I know right now people play the game of moving their car like every hour or 2 hours, but if you're going to be at your desk all day, why would you even want to deal with it?
It doesn't make sense, but people do it.
But it's just a change in mentality.
Yeah.
But and I know a lot of teenagers who use that. Like, I have talked to families who are like, I'm so glad the bus is
Oh,
running
really? Oh,
again."
good.
Yeah, like
Oh,
people who
okay.
live like in Pine Valley, their kids take the bus
Oh, good,
all
good.
the
Okay,
time to
good.
get
All
around.
right,
But
good.
they're like, you know, like 14 to 16-year-old kind
Okay.
of age
Oh,
group.
that's good.
I'd say go back 15 years, we had a couple summers where we really enforced the parking rules really strictly, and we went even to a later on, went to like 7, I think, and it was a noticeable difference downtown. There were noticeably fewer, there were more spaces open, there was a noticeable difference. And at that point, that's the time when when like the Dreamland and where the bus station is now, they had like, people were buying parking spaces. They were spending like between $3,000 and $10,000 a summer to get a parking space. You know, some of the realtors were getting spaces for like $3,000, $8,000, so they didn't.
Oh, behind, like.
Yeah, remember they used to have those,
Yeah,
they had parking lots, they had
Yeah.
a parking lot where the buses park now. So, so your enforcement and how you do that, goes into it. And you can tell right now, when you drive through town, and you can tell when there's spaces in town in the middle of the day, that means they've ticketed that day before. And then a couple of days later, when we're not ticketing, they all fill up again. Everybody there looks out the window, they know when
Yes, of course
there's
they
tickets are coming and when they're not. They know when they have to do the right thing and when they can, when they can cheat. So it's very much a reflection of what's the cost and what's the impact.
So for process-wise, how do you guys want to do goal number 3? You want to reword it a little bit? I heard some suggestions there. And Janet, Chuck, you guys can jump in
I'm happy
process-wise.
to record whatever.
I personally can't come up with anything better. So it's easy, it's measurable,
We were saying 5%?
Yeah, should we have,
Was it
come up with some
I was kicking around
suggestions?
ideas for, what modes do you couple together and pick a percentage, and then how do you increase it? Well, I know how you increase it, these are the things that increase it. But what those numbers are and where do you want to get to? Do you want to go from 65, drive alone, to 60? Or do you want to go from, I'm making up numbers now, 30% multimodal use to 35% multimodal use? Multimodal being taxis, public transportation, walk, bike.
Maybe that's an action item, to take back, is to really go to the next level of detail and look at particular measures and come back and recommend one.
Yeah.
But I think,
Yeah, you should do that.
we could come
Yeah.
to agreement that we're going to, keep, number 3
Yeah.
in terms of
And I think it's good if you
goal.
did both. If you said, we'd like to do driving alone by 5 and the other by 5.
Yeah.
Like give a couple things that you're measuring.
Yeah.
I think that.
It's not unrealistic. I mean,
No, and they're connected.
we pick best practices for the parking management, 15% available parking spaces. I mean, this is another percentage you try to manipulate.
I don't think just for the public, 5%, the 10%, 5% people are gonna say, oh, okay, that's not gonna hurt me terribly.
Someone else will do it.
Someone else will do it. 20% will be like, oh, no. So I think politically, I think 5 is a good number.
And it's not saying decrease people's ownership of cars. It's decrease their use of
Yes,
them.
yes.
Because people get very worked up about
Yeah.
that.
Let's take that car away, Matt.
It passed town meeting twice.
It did?
It did.
But I didn't think it was illegal.
Not, well, it was legal. It still is legal.
Oh.
If it's voted, it's legal.
Wow.
If we voted for it, but, I've got
You got the article
I have
ready?
legal opinions if you want to read them. Tucked in my old file somewhere, but.
So the 5% reduced use of privately owned vehicles, something like this, 5%, we'll just use that as rough until the next go around. And I'll do some homework to see if that's actually pretty good. There are people that live down Hummock Pond Road that they don't have access to public transportation, so they're not affecting them. So that's where the land use component kind of comes into this whole get people out of their cars, land use, economics, infrastructure. Some people just are not within the infrastructure and land use sweet spot. I'll take a look at this and report back.
Okay, you had 2 different measurements, right? You said there was one that was like 30%, or you guys were talking about
You
one
can- you
was
can-
1.6 to
You can decrease
Yeah.
one by X and increase the other.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Is it the same thing, we're just looking at measuring different ways?
Yeah, driving alone, 65%, get it down to 60. I'll double check and see
Okay.
what that works, how that works, and where they would go to. I would say public transportation, that's going to go from 1% to 6%.
How do you count the person who drives to a park and ride and catches the bus?
Where do they fall into that?
Yeah,
I would say public transportation, but,
I was just curious.
yeah,
Yeah.
It would depend how they answer the survey.
probably.
It would probably depend what they think.
Yeah, they probably answer other, and other's like 0.5% is other, and that's some combination, even motorcycle is its own special category. I can share that, and maybe the information I share with Matt.
Send it.
Okay.
All right, so Mike's gonna come back with some more specific suggestions. Is that what we're doing?
Recommendations.
This is
yeah,
really good, this is
recommendations.
solid, this is solid, I'll just verify it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's other things that we can do down there, like, you know, sort of bike corrals at the end of streets where you're not taking parking spaces away, but we have more places for bike to park or for mopeds to park. Like, you make it easier for those sort of transportation things to park, you know?
Mhm.
So,
Those are action steps underneath the broad strategy.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some, like, even you call them goofy, but there's so many fun things we could do. You know? I was just watching this show on Amsterdam yesterday, just the bicycles, and just amazing.
The bicycle garages.
Right next to the train station?
Yeah.
That's,
That's amazing.
that blew me away.
All right, we all know where we're going with this?
Yeah,
Libby,
it's great.
no?
Not clear.
All right, so Mike's gonna get back to us with just some redefined language on,
Decrease use of privately owned vehicles by 5%, is that realistic? Where's that 5% go? Okay.
But right now, like, we got a placeholder of 5%, and we're gonna, that's number one, we've accepted this goal, we've agreed to the goal, right?
Mhm.
And number two, we've got a placeholder of 5% that we can either keep or change, or have it better defined by your research, so.
Yeah, accommodating taxis, rideshare companies, and then free public transportation, which I think is great.
There's Uber.
Yeah,
Are we going to consider maybe car sharing someday?
yeah.
I think, again, promoting mobility
Mhm.
is something we're trying to get our head around. And, there's some really good examples, in other countries, mobility as a service. It's integrated with your smartphone, an app. It shows real time what your options are, whether it's Uber or taxi or bus or walking. So I think you probably want to try to keep that view, more expansive and not rule out something. But again, trying to get, people out of their cars and considering other forms.
Yeah. We were talking about pedicabs, and I don't know what the other things were that we had talked about, but yeah, there were a lot of other options that,
Well,
yeah,
So,
that's why we were
I
laughing
think we
about it.
rejected petty cars.
At town meeting.
What about that, the brewery on wheels? That might be, that should come back.
Yes.
Yeah, that's-
For its cap.
That
do
was
we
one,
need
yeah.
anything else on data and research, or are we good for all that?
Other communities, that looks like a WPI project, if anybody has any thoughts on that.
On which, sorry?
Strategies in other communities that
yeah.
achieve this goal. They're really good for research, so, I mean, I could talk, I'm actually talking with Dominique next week. I can bring this up as one of the potential projects.
I just did, so I was really uncomfortable with the goal in terms of the broad strategies. I'm just trying to think about how example ways to provide free public transportation. I mean, it just kind of sits up there, I'm not sure. What does that mean? Does that mean free buses, and then the taxi people may not like that? And I just, maybe, I'm sure there was a lot of thought behind it, making it free. The group had thought about making it, why making it free is good.
I don't know if we put a lot of thought in it, but I think it's, when you go to somewhere like Aspen or, places like that, Vail or Aspen, everyone uses the bus. Hardly anyone uses a car, and it's free. You hop on the bus, you go to the mountain, you hop on the bus, you go to dinner. Eventually, if paid parking and in the other part, in the
That
other,
drives people.
yeah, and people will start saying, hey, you go to Nantucket, you leave your car, we rented a Jeep for a day, but the rest of the time, we went around the island on a bus. That's the vision I think we need to have. So, and I'm not gonna get there, and we just raise the prices.
So examining ways to provide free public would say demand management principles work, there's funding there.
There's funding, then you can start to do that, yeah, exactly.
And there's probably more in depth than that.
So is it provide free transportation?
Well, the price was just doubled, so you'd say if you set the goal at free and you get halfway there, maybe you just ratchet it back to where it was before.
I'm saying, it's just kind of hanging out there, provide free transportation, it's not necessarily linked to anything, so that's fine, but I won't, that's fine, just leave it at that.
Well, you could say make it as cheap as possible. I don't know.
Incentivize it.
I-
It's an incentive, yeah.
But, yeah, we're trying to problem solve here, so.
Yeah,
we're probably
Yeah, I
gonna
think we
move on.
should move on to the next one.
Good facilitator.
Because the agenda,
So ready to move on to environment? Is that what you're saying? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Okay, environment. Can we dig into this? So we have one goal. Does anybody want to lead? I was not in this meeting.
Rita was the board member at that meeting.
Yes.
Rita, do you want to kind of talk us through?
Yep. So I think what was very interesting at the very start was that both Roberto and Rob were surprised to see that this was our only goal and that we didn't have water quality mentioned anywhere as one of our goals. And so we talked about that quite a bit, and that felt like, that could have been something that we added on in the work group, but that in and of itself is such a huge task, and it's also one that we are already doing things. So what we discussed from there was, Rob felt it was important that we sort of memorialize the fact that the reason we aren't focusing on water quality as a goal is because there are things already in motion, because he felt anyone picking this up in 3 years' time to try and figure out why this board didn't have water quality when we've all said it is important. So he felt it was important that we have that somewhere in the material. But also then we discussed within the context of the landfill to bring water quality out as one of the sort of things we're trying to achieve with the new landfill. So making sure that water quality was an important part of this. So from there, what we really got into was the idea of zero waste and sustainability. And Rob made a really good point that I think where his issue with the way we had our goal written was that he felt we didn't have enough information to really set what our goal, to define our goal. So something like zero waste, we don't have enough information of what's currently going on at the landfill to really say that zero waste is the best way. So we scaled it back or we didn't scale it back, but we changed it in a way where we tried to grab the fact that we really need to get a comprehensive understanding of what waste is going through the landfill at the moment, and then use that information to define the goal more so. So that's where we changed it to a data-driven recommendation. And then we talked a bit about what is sustainability, and we felt that it was important for our group to define what it is to us, because has been defined in so many different ways. So we said that part of our data and research would be looking at the different definitions and then figuring out how we're defining sustainability, so that it's clear for everyone, again, picking this up in 3 years' time or in 2 years' time or when we do the presentation. And then the island-wide solid waste options, maybe Libby, you can kind of help. This was something that Roberto really added to it, and the idea that we want to look at not just what's coming into the landfill, but really waste across the island. So those are the 3 main points. Making it data-driven so that we make sure that we're basing the goal on information that we need to get now. Having it be island-wide, and then defining sustainability. So those were the adjustments we made to the goal itself. And then you can see we added a couple things under broad strategies. One, Rob was a little bit worried about calling it a sustainability office because he felt that sounded too big, and then we'd need to worry about staffing an office, so really refining that to at least a sustainability officer. I think this...
Just a comment, can we comment on those, going through, do you want to?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So I think we purposely said that because we wanted to have, I should say, the thought behind that was that it creates a locus for understanding this, and it doesn't necessarily say, it doesn't really necessarily put it in the, in just one position. And it's easy for an officer to get subsumed with another department or kind of board.
Yeah.
And I think there's some benefit personally in some separateness at this time.
I would tend to agree. I think one of the things we might, depending on how the group feels, whether it's, better to say a sustainability officer or to say an office, is to just, again, define what a sustainability office is. We had a bit of a discussion about it, and I was thinking that technically I think Lauren Sinatra and a future recycling coordinator could be the sustainability office in addition to your sustainability officer, so it could be its own entity. So I think if we just, that staff knows what we mean when we say sustainability office, who is that? What is it? Is it one person? Is it separate? But I kind of agree with you, Jim, that I think having it as its own entity means that it's covering all the other areas and not getting sort of taken over by another group. But that was something that Rob was concerned about.
And I think I agree with Jim, when we explained the energy office, everyone said, we don't need that, what's this? And now you talk to people, they go, oh, it's great, they're saved us money, they're doing a good job.
You can see.
So I think you want a big detail onto that,
Yeah.
even if it's an officer or it's
Even with
someone
one
else.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree.
So keep it as a sustainability office.
Rita, can I go back to the goal?
Yeah.
Your guys' revised goal?
Yep.
Shorter is always better, simpler. Could we take out the select board with and just say provide data-driven recommendations? It's just a small
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
To me, it's implied that's going to the select board, the community, everybody. It's just less words for the goal.
Yeah.
And this is really picky, but just in terms of wordsmithing and perception of the community, I don't like the words waste options put together because it really kind of, makes you think about our current vendor. And I'm wondering
That's a good
if
point.
That's a way
I didn't take it that way, but it could be.
that's really picky, so I don't have, and I'm trying to think of an alternative.
No, I think it's a good point. Yeah, what would a,
Just from a perception.
Just eliminate options, right?
Solid waste
Solid
management,
waste.
guided by principles of sustainability. Yeah.
Or practices, you know,
Or
solid
program.
waste, practices, whatever.
Yeah, I like removing it or
Solid
using
waste
practices.
disposal.
solid waste? I think disposal would, because disposal will be throwing away, where some of the options will be recycling or composting.
Or
How about solid,
preventing.
solid waste management,
Solid waste management.
guided by principles of
Solid
sustainability?
waste management? Waste management?
Sorry to derail you, I just wanted.
No, that's fine. So going back to some of the other things that we added, I think, Jim, to what you were just, I think you were just saying, but you brought up a couple times during the work group sessions, was this idea of how do we look at reducing our overall waste? So while we're looking at how we're managing, really trying to pick apart how can we reduce it from the very start. So we added that into a broad strategy. Making that an important part of it is reducing overall waste. As we were talking as well, one of the things that kept coming up is that we feel there's many opportunities that would be fairly easy to implement now within the next 3 years, just within, we'll even say, town admin buildings or town buildings, and having consistency with the way that we deal with solid waste in the buildings. Possibly working with WPI to come up with a couple pilot programs, for town-owned properties, and the reasoning behind this was that these could serve as a little bit of our own, they would be easy to implement, they would serve as our own little incubator, so that in 3 years we can already start to understand what it would take to implement some of these at a larger scale. And at least at that work group, or at that session, we felt that they were fairly achievable. And I think they still are, because Lydia hasn't said anything.
I think it's all good.
Are we all good with the modified number 3 and 4? For the broad strategies?
We're going to change it back to office.
Did they?
Kind of
Okay.
office,
Office,
yeah.
That's changed. 4 was fine.
And did we put in a different word besides options in the goal?
We suggested management,
Management,
Practices.
practice, or program.
solid waste practices, either one's fine.
Other than
One more.
solid waste.
I think
I think
management,
management.
Management.
management, I think is good.
Yeah.
Management it is.
Management of solid waste?
Rob also did say that go for the data research, but resources is that he will absolutely need help to conduct this audit if we want to do this in the next 3 years. We'll need outside help for that.
So conduct an operational audit of the solid waste facility. So what does that mean? I mean, I don't, so is it an operational audit of the ability of the current vendor to implement their agreement, or? Are they doing a good job, or?
I think there's an element of, so if you flip to the next page, one of the things is assess current and historical composition of solid waste. So that's part of our baseline, is understanding exactly what's coming in. And then the operational is looking at how have we dealt with what's coming in, and how effective have we been, and then what are other options available to us now for dealing with that differently if we want to do it more efficiently.
Is it intake or output? Like, is it audit of like how we as a citizen go in and dispose of it, or
It's-
just waste options operations?
I think it's all of it. It's all of it. It's really understanding how Waste Options has dealt with the waste that has come in, how people are behaving on the outside, and then looking at other options. I think there's a feeling that we can be more efficient and effective.
I agree.
And so I think we have to understand the as-is, which is what the as-is, the historical waste, and then looking at what the options are to improve the efficiency and the effectiveness, and ultimately the cost effectiveness.
So, as I understand it, it's essentially hiring maybe a third party, and they sample from all the waste streams for, a couple hours. They'll take, whatever residents would be dumping into the dumpster, pull it off, pull it over here, rip open the bags, see what's in there in terms of recyclables versus waste. Same thing with the commercial haulers, going down to the tipping floor, kind of pulling their loads aside, going through the bags again to try to look at what's in the waste stream, and doing that type of a sampled approach.
Yeah.
I think it's probably good that we talk about this, because I have a very different idea of what an operational audit is. Facility.
Can I add?
I think I'm with
Okay. It's all of these things that you're talking about, but it's to look at the operation of the, so what is what's happening there best management practices? There are things that have happened since not only the Waste Options contract, but since certain of the facilities out there were built, like the MRF. There's for example, very recently, there's a complete crash of the recycling market. How are we handling the recyclables now? Are we doing it properly? Are there other alternatives to manage them? It's looking at the waste stream and what's in it. Are people actually recycling? If you open a bunch of bags that come in, you're going to find that they're not.
Not anymore.
So how do we deal with that? What's a practice to deal with that? When people, it's from the very basic to how people get into the landfill. Is that the most efficient way? What we heard on our tour was, no, it isn't. To, is the thing set up right for people to dispose of their solid waste? It's pretty big, but if we're going to have a modified plan, or when the contract expires, and we're going to be looking at if the operation is what we want it to be. Are we going to keep, there's a lot to it.
Yeah. And I want to add as well, I think that is why we put in island-wide solid waste management, because if we didn't want to limit it to just what happens on site once things come in the door. So the island-wide is grabbing what's happening to waste before it even gets there, and how you really, to do it well. And that's when we did our tour, that's what the guys were saying, is that there's so much of their time is wasted and their efficiency is affected by the way people are behaving before the garbage gets there. So to do it well, you've got to address both sides, the on-site as well as island-wide. So, and I think that exactly what was meant by operational, I have a feeling it's more along the lines of what you're thinking. It was Rob's comment, and it goes hand in hand with that assessment of current and historical composition of solid waste. So there's the actual operations, and then there's the sort of the numbers and the data of what's coming in.
You could spend a lot of time analyzing all this, and maybe that's the right thing to do, but if your solution is dramatic, like gasification, for example, or something like that, then how will you get to that? I'm just trying to think, how will you get to those kinds of solutions with this information?
Well, I think something like gasification, any technology in that realm of gasification is such a huge investment, and definitely would be one of the riskier ones, that in order to, I think, justify that expense, you would have to have all of that data to say, we are generating 60% X that is going to go into the gas, and that's why it's worth
so
it.
like what Chuck said, we need to know what's in there.
We do, yeah, in order to, and this was something that had come up we talked about, this came up during our tour, and we talked a little bit about it during the work group, this idea of whether our board, how we're going to look at our approach, and how innovation, or how open are we to innovation, how open are we to risk? Because there's a big difference with waste between, and the options are totally different. If you're willing to take the risk on some of these gasification, some of the innovation technologies, versus can you be visionary and innovative without necessarily having the same risk? And
Does
that,
George guide us on this? Libby, or?
I think so.
Or do we have?
Yeah.
I mean, I think with Rob, we have expertise that we may not have had before. I mean, didn't he run a solid waste options thing before? Is George-
He's definitely, Rob definitely has experience with solid waste management, yes, but I think George has a background that lends himself to a lot of the analytical
Yeah.
stuff. So, and he's already done a lot of research on something like gasification, and I think what Rita said was exactly why we're doing the composition, analysis of the composition of the waste stream to see if there's enough stock even for gasification and that sort of thing. Are we efficiently operating for what's coming in, that kind of thing? So I think we would work with George, and there may be other expertise that we're going to need.
But I think, I mean, but personally, I'm a lot more confident in our position today with the two of them than before.
Historically, back again 15 years ago, there was a guy, Dennis Miller, who worked for Salina, who was one of the early gasification things. Bender got him the split of stuff from the dump, and he gave it to this guy, Dennis Miller, and Dennis Miller said it would work, a small plant would work with what we had then. Now, maybe our split has changed because more of the construction is going to Reese or something, so you'd have to look at that. One suggestion on these is to analyze, when we do this analysis, is analyze the incentives. I think what's happened is there's no incentive to, there's no incentive for waste options to do certain things. There's no incentives for the public to do it. Like how, we've gotten where we've gotten because I think some of the incentives are not in place. So I don't know how, I think that was just a suggestion.
Well, that's a good point. So I don't know if this is quite exactly what you're talking about, but for example, the compost. We have research compost marketing programs on here, but right now, the only incentive, I think, for people to use the compost is that it's free. But the quality is somewhat in question, for commercial use anyway. And how do we make it better, that kind of thing. So there may be, and how do you market it? Some of this goes sort of together. But another incentive possibly is, you got to make this as easy as possible for people to sort, get their stuff to the landfill, all of that. If it's very difficult, they're not really going to do it. And right now, you can throw everything in your garbage bag and heave it into the mixed trash, and that's it. And the stuff that goes in there subsequently has to be sorted out. It doesn't always make it to be sorted out. So one of the things they told us on the tour was they are finding a lot of clothing, for example, that gets into the digester and clogs things up in there. And we said, is it as simple as putting a bin over by the cans, say, and just telling people, fire all your clothes in there, not in your trash bag? But there's education. And there's, again, making it easy for people to do that. But those are...
Then there's no incentive to move the clothes over there because then they haven't gone over the scale. So everything that gets weighed gets paid. Everything that gets set aside is looked at differently.
Well, right, but if we're going to get into paying, then that's maybe the opposite.
But that's where you have to go into the details of if there's 300 pounds of clothes going through the biodigester, jamming it up, what's the savings they're making by just having a free, drop off your
No, I'm saying that's completely the thing, but right now, like for waste options, there's no incentive. If they want stuff, they want as much as they can, driving over that scale and being credited to them.
But they don't
Anyway.
agree to some extent, but it doesn't exactly totally work like that. So the clothes, I think, are more...
Yeah, like the cost for clothes.
They come in all different ways, but what is not happening is they're not getting separated out at the beginning, for example.
And I think to a certain extent that it's costing them a lot of money between the repairs and then the landfill, because all that's going to the landfill. And one thing that actually has come up every single time we've talked about it, we haven't formalized it, is the conversation about how compostables behave in the biodigester, because we're not sure. And one of the other things that we saw is that plastic bags that's what's going into our lined landfill, because they're not breaking down. And so we talked about compostable bags, and then again, whether it's the compostable cups, compostable, all this takeaway things, and even if we were to switch to compostable bags, everyone kind of says, well, we don't know if they'd actually break down, and I feel like that's something that should be part of our data and research.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about that
Yeah.
for years. Does it really
Richard, right?
help? Does it really
Yeah.
break down? Because no one's really going to separate. Because so many of my customers, we tried many years at Handlebar to say, compostable cups here,
Yeah.
plastic glass, and it just
Well,
can't manage it. People can't figure it out.
And I've said this many times, is there's, you can't mix plastic and compostable plastic together, it ruins the load. If you actually are trying to recycle, there's a certain percent, if there's any at all, I talked to the 2 or 3 of the manufacturers of these things, you ruin the whole recyclability. So you really almost want to be one way or the other.
Yeah.
You don't want to be doing both. And in a lot of these places, when you look at, Seattle and stuff, or in Canada, a lot of it is getting the organics out into green buckets before. So all the restaurants do it, all the individuals do it. If you go up with a mixed bag, you pay. If you go up with everything sorted, it's free.
Yeah.
And so you have to set the incentives for the people, so it's like that, and for the businesses to follow that. If we did that, our digester would come out, and then it'd be beautiful, and then if the cups were all compostable, you'd put them in windrows, and you'd run it for 6 months, and you'd have this stuff you could sell for big money.
Exactly.
But the problem now, it's full of glass.
Yeah.
You get it, and it's gotten better. It isn't quite as full, but I've used it a couple of times, and I picked glass out of my lawn at work for 5 years after.
Glass, plastic, styrofoam, and again, I think even with that, like the green waste doesn't need to go in a bag. Like if the plastic bags we're lining our landfill cells with, then I think we need to do that. So that came up as part of it, and I just thought that was something that has come up in every conversation, but we didn't write it as part of the data and research. Is how do the compostables behave?
And the other part is how do you deal with the people who are generating the most waste, which is this, the Stop and Shop and the large stores. Like how do you incentivize them and set up a system where either everything they bring on, they have to bring back off, or, how do they fit within our system? It's one thing to target the restaurants and we're easy to get, but we're like a tiny speck compared to what goes out of that building. So how do we include them in the solution? I think they're willing, but we have to include them.
And that's something that would hopefully, or maybe, if we said it was part of a scope, come out of the analysis, as in how much are these bigger stores generating and packaging.
And they do some stuff already. They recycle their cardboard. They have big compactors and compact the cardboard, set it off. Maybe they could be compacting their other waste. Maybe they could be compacting their plastic and getting it off. Yeah, I don't know. But
So the analyzing incentives, will it be part of what George can do with some other, there's a lot of research in here. Are we getting too much in the weeds of who does the research and?
You could go back to the committee to come
Okay.
back here.
Just as we go through this and look at our alternatives, hopefully that we'll keep in mind the opportunity and the importance of creating some open space.
And what happens next with the landfill, yeah.
Do we have any other comments on the feedback, any additions?
I almost think the water quality should be, like you say, I think it should be put on the list as a goal, not just mentioned. And even if it's just said, we're doing a great job, let's continue to monitor and improve our water quality efforts. And just left it at that. That would acknowledge it, make it a goal, but.
Yeah. I think that was one that we discussed quite a bit, and because we only had an hour, we decided to put it aside. But I thought it was a very, very good point, and if there was a way to put it into a goal or just recognize it as a goal somehow, I think it would be important.
Well, the only reason I didn't make a goal, because it was a lot of things you and I talked about,
Yeah.
was because we only could do 2.
Yeah.
And we said, we're doing a lot, so
Right.
You know, these other things are higher
Yeah.
priority. So if we want to make it a third goal, that's fine.
Yeah.
But we just had a different set of rules that
Yeah,
day.
yeah,
So-
exactly.
Or it'd be a second goal, right?
It would be a second.
Well, it's sort of like, a bit like the parking demand management goal. We already have an internal staff group that's working on a variety of water quality initiatives that are all over the board. So we could almost do something like that. Maybe the group can talk a little bit more.
Yeah, does the work group want to meet again and just frame it?
Yeah,
Put it
we'll come
together.
up with something and it captures what we're already doing and just put some sort of a metric that makes sense. on
It
what's
creates
achievable.
that it creates an awareness that the
Yeah.
board's aware of it and
Yeah.
focused on it.
Yeah,
And their ethics.
yeah,
And, you know,
okay, great.
That's good.
Any other thoughts on the environment? John, Tucker? Mike?
No, it seemed like the tag, I mean, the tag for the transportation was get people out of the car. The tag for environmental seemed like it was zero waste. But it seems like water quality is somewhere in there too, so
Yeah, so the
I
discussion.
don't know. I just-
Yeah, the discussion we had around zero waste was because we felt, Rob felt we needed to have more information on what's currently happening at the landfill before we can say zero waste is our strategy.
Okay.
And one of the things that we did discuss a bit is that in some respects, so again, the textbook definition is 90% diversion from landfill, whereas ours might be 100%. So at this stage, sort of honing in, keeping zero waste out there is an option, but not honing in specifically on zero waste as it's defined, but I
And when
don't
we
think.
first thought of it, it was analogous to limiting the number of cars on the island
Topic we
Yeah.
made.
in terms of its
This is the
provocative
type of
nature.
thing that they need to go to.
Shoot for the stars, I know.
I just want to make one little public service announcement that June 4th, we are showing the movie Straws at Dreamland. It's free
What time?
at 5.
5?
Is that the marijuana?
Yeah,
Yeah.
marijuana forms at 6.
It's
Oh, so
exactly-
you can make it, because it's only a half-hour movie.
And Q&A for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Nice try.
Monday, June 4th.
Nice try.
Can you show it again?
So,
No.
But, you know, again, it's such a baby step, but it is the straws is really changing behavior, but removing something from the waste stream, trying to remove something from the waste stream. And that is
Baby steps.
if anything, I think the tagline is, how do we reduce our overall waste generation? That's what I think is kind of the bigger vision.
I think it's awareness. I think that's kind of the tagline. I think
Yeah.
that's where we're starting.
Yep. Awareness that we're not.
Because also, locals are one thing, but we have tourists coming
The
over
board has
who
accepted all of these
do their own
goals,
thing.
including
How
the
do we
ones
get
they
to
looked
that?
at housing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Education is huge.
Housing was on the agenda last time, but we
Like we
made
need
no.
our-
Oh,
okay.
that's why we
In
need
the
the
meeting with the
consistency of how
financial
you deal
I
with
agree
it.
with you.
weekend.
Yeah, make it a new type
I
of
need to
thing.
know what I'm
Oh, wait a
presenting.
minute.
Okay. All right, team, we need to make sure, have we officially accepted all these goals?
Do we do our trash bills?
Reason being, one, for process and keep moving on, but we're also the chairs and vice chairs of the planning board, FinCom, and select board are meeting to kind of go over this for kind of our buy-in that we all talked about, of reaching out. So housing, we didn't officially accept all of those. Are we okay? Was there any, let's start with transportation environment, because we're talking about that now. Are we okay to accept these goals?
And sorry, just to clarify, so the environmental leadership work group, we should come up with a second goal.
Yes.
think
And then
we're
we'll
gonna
just
recommend
review
it.
that.
Right.
yeah.
Are we okay with accepting the first goal? We took options out, but management in
Oh, for the environment?
Yeah.
for environment, yeah. So I'll just switch back over to you, Rita.
Yes, I'm happy with, oh, yeah, absolutely.
You're
I'm
happy with
the
it?
changes,
Yes.
yeah.
And the board is? All right, so that's accepted. And then 2, you're gonna come back with?
Yep.
And then transportation, we're all pretty clear. I think the first goal, we're all good with that one. It's already in motion, the data and the research. So goal 1 and 2, are those acceptable to the board? Very good, everybody's shaking their head. All right, so we got transportation, environment, and then housing, we just
Goal
want
number
to,
3.
And you added 3.
That's goal number 3. Okay.
oh, yeah, so transportation, sorry, yep. Were we very clear on that? We're gonna change it to a positive, like increase this, or are we just gonna,
I think you're gonna have Mike and put a couple numbers to it, yeah.
Okay. So we're agreeing that we might change goal number 3, the wording.
Okay.
Sorry, that's where it is. So you
Give them
can-
what we've got.
You don't want
Yeah.
to put it in
I think it's
for,
pretty solid, though. I think
Yeah.
we're up 99% there. I don't know what wordsmith will change, but I'll just verify everything.
Well, you verify the numbers and send them to her, and then,
right, so we use that
and I
wording.
think it could be both. I think you should give them the 2, you know, increase this, decrease that,
Probably something like that.
if that,
Can
if
we
those
get in
make
here
sense.
today?
Sure you can.
Don't.
That meeting is the 24th, and I need to get the goals to Andrew to get to his peeps.
Between 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock, I'll see what I can do.
If not, just, I would just say, put that goal in there, and then we can talk about it in the meeting, that it's, there might be some wordsmithing, but the point is there. Okay, housing goals. We have 1, 2, and 3. I know we haven't talked about those and thought about them for a little bit. But we're looking at, see how Jana put Libby put the revised goal there? So number 1, at the end of each year between now and 2021, 24 new units will be added to the SHI list. Everybody comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay. And then number 2, by September 2021, finalize a plan to address housing needs specifically for town employees year-round and seasonal. I think we're all pretty good on that. That's already started, finding some information.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
Just because I'm out of the loop on that. Is there anything about location of affordable housing? Because it's so important to have these around your other options, like if it was on the fringes of the island out in the middle of nowhere. That's probably,
That's going to be
I
part
think
of our
that's
work.
definitely
Yeah, it's part of the
our
data
work.
research.
yeah, okay,
I-
good, good.
I would say that that's very,
Just aligning with
very
any of the
recognized.
town
in terms of
overlay and next to,
transportation
exactly.
issues.
One of the
Yeah.
things was getting the zoning.
It may be appropriate for a few cottages to be out in the outlying hills, but anything larger will be in the town.
My services.
Depending what land the town has available, et cetera. That's what I would guess.
The idea being that not affordable housing users would be all other dependent.
We're not targeting all win it for the
Yeah.
affordable housing.
And that
That's the
one's
spirit.
talking about town employee housing, it's not
Yeah.
really.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
You're talking about in general, but
General location,
Right, first data
It
town
has
overlay next to a
come
bus
up that
line.
there might be a random lot in Tom Edwards or in Surfside that could be appropriate to build like 2 units on
Yeah.
for town employees, but
and that's why we're looking at all the land we have, then we can make decisions on each
For
one
any-
or not.
anything larger would definitely be preferred to be on those bus route.
So goal number 2, we're good?
Yes.
Team head shaking. And then goal number 3, that was revised to, by 2019, determine in greater detail need at all affordability levels, 30% AMI, 175% for the community. All happy with that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so everything is, yeah, okay.
I was just gonna, so the trust fund embarks actually tomorrow with Judy Barrett on their work to develop the implementation plan for the housing production plan. And so the question is just, would it be appropriate to share these draft goals of the board with the trust fund at this point? And Judy?
I think so. I mean, I think to me, it's the same as sharing them with FinCom and planning board.
It's, we're being taped, so it's all public.
I just wanted to ask.
It's good.
So yes.
Great.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
And this isn't to limit their thought process, their creativity.
No, yeah, but
This is
just,
the-
it's
yeah.
good for them to be aware of what you all are working.
Alignment.
Yeah.
So you're meeting with the planning board Thursday? So,
We haven't.
is that, have we talked about, so that's just to share our goals and get feedback from them, or what is
Yeah,
that?
that was our strategy, to reach out to other groups, just to have a conversation,
Just kind of, I
so
mean, if you-
they don't hear it at a select
Right, so
board.
with their information.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
and get some feedback, just
Okay,
from the other
good. So I look
boards.
forward to hear, you'll report back to us next time maybe, what they say and everything. All right, good.
Janet and Chuck, good on everything you need to know?
Yes, except for next steps we need to figure out.
So we have
We have some
So-
information that we need to be developed for each goal, and that was on the very last page of the packet. And so that's work that Chuck and I had proposed would be done at the work groups and then come back to these plenary sessions.
And where are we at with what we're doing for the public presentation?
We have a date, I believe,
Was it June 20th?
June 20th, yeah.
June 20th. And I was going to work with Florencia just to start to get something put together, some slides, and make them very visual. And then I was going to work on kind of what you suggested, Jim, at one of our last meetings was, like, you have these points to go over, right? And then whether it's environment and then
Okay,
the transportation. So I'll do the majority of it, and then we'll split some of it out.
great.
I think we'll review that before then.
Yeah, I think we'd have
We have a
to.
review session planned
Yeah, we do.
for the prior week.
With the whole board?
I
No,
don't think
Just
so.
I think it's
with
just,
you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if, as I said, I mean, I think if this is your show as chairman, and then if each of us get a little thing to say, to look, to show that we will participate, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, it can be really specific, and you can also
Good team.
make,
Yeah, yeah,
you can make comments afterwards as well. It doesn't have to be, I'm just saying this.
And are we gonna do this at a, I can't remember, to do this at a board meeting or a separate meeting, or
At a board meeting.
at a board?
Yeah, on
meeting?
the, June 20th.
So it'll be a public hearing kind of thing, where people can stand up and, I mean, people, we want.
Public comment,
feedback-
but
we
not a
want
public
feedback
hearing.
From people, or?
Well, we can talk about that. I'm fine with having people ask. I think what we're gonna see, what I'm expecting is to see somebody there saying, well, why isn't the
Right, right.
senior center feasibility, why isn't the
Yeah.
senior center in this?
Where's coastal conservation?
Where's this, where's that? And I think that's
Coastal resiliency.
that'll be really
Yes.
good for them to hear of why, I mean, those questions are good. It's gonna really focus, this is why we're doing this, and it doesn't mean that all these other things we're not going to think about them, right?
So it might be
So-
good to spend some time thinking of talking about the process we went through
Yeah.
before going right into
Yeah.
what we came up with.
So-
Because we did talk about all those things.
Yeah, almost the day one
Yeah.
work group, work
Right.
session, where we had all the different, opioids
So
and,
not to get into the weeds of all this, but we're going to show pictures of us pointing to mental health and like everything that we looked at and really talk about,
You're all over that. so-
Yeah.
Very good.
yeah, like just our process and where we are today and how it's going forward.
Right.
And, I think it will be good for somebody to come up and say, well, why isn't the senior center in this? And then we can explain why.
All right, explain it. Why isn't it?
Because one of the issues with the select board is all these things are coming at us all the time, we can't focus. And so we met for 8 months, 12 months, 14, whatever it is, and said, these are the things that we're not going to lose sight of, regardless of different board members coming in and out, and it doesn't mean that we're not going to add a senior center in. Right, but these three areas are what we're not going to lose focus on. So that, by
How are you
default,
gonna, how are you gonna focus on my senior center then? I'm getting older.
We'll do that as well. It's not saying we're not going to, we're just
Won't
saying,
be around to
here's what we're
enjoy it.
not going to.
No, I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, of course.
Because that's gonna be a hard.
Sure.
That's gonna be the hard part of
And
it.
you're gonna get phone calls,
Put it back on
you're gonna
them.
explain
And
it.
think of the
Senior
stuff we
center's
get now.
More
Yeah,
more
so-
important than landfill?
Actually, if people do
That's what
ask
we're gonna do
that,
then.
I think that's a good sign.
Yeah.
If they don't ask that, then they're not engaged. I mean, I'm trying, I mean, I think it's, you know what I mean, I think that's good if they
I
ask that
think,
stuff.
yeah, I think the other element as well is that this is a 3-year plan. So, these are the things that if the strategic plan is reviewed in 3 years, and if, there's other topics that we should be focusing on at that point, then we become focused.
Right. I think we can use other examples of, I get off the top of my head, issues that are going to come up this next year that will. It's not like we're not going to talk about a special town meeting marijuana because it's not in the strategic plan.
Right.
It's important. We're
Yeah,
going to
but
talk
it's,
about it.
I think we do want to make the point, though, that it's not just the board that's unfocused because of all these things that come in, it's town administration. And we are so ridiculously reactive to everything. We have zero time to plan things out and be proactive about stuff because we're reacting to everything that comes in, and things come out of the blue all the time. So one of the reasons to develop the strategic plan was to do just what you're saying, to focus everybody's efforts on these things. And correct, it doesn't mean we're not going to do other things, but we also have all the day-to-day we have to do, and we have the routine things that come up every year that have to be done. The annual town meeting, the budget, the capital plan, special town meetings that might crop up. And then there's all the numerous citizen ideas that come in that people want to have done tomorrow. And some of those things are going to have to be put aside, because we are never going to get anywhere if we don't put them aside. And we can say, though, and I think we talked about this at the very beginning, that's a good idea, we like it, but we don't have the capacity to do it right now. We are going to put it in our file and bring it up when we do our annual review of the strategic plan. And if it's risen up more, then we'll work it in. But if it hasn't, we're not really going to do that right now.
And we've never had anything like this before to be able to say that. All we've said is, we're too busy. Right, I mean.
Well, yeah, or we say, okay,
Or we don't have the money.
We'll do
We
it.
don't have the money. So now we do exactly what, and I think I found myself doing it now. I think we all have been thinking that way, which is a good thing. And we did it with, let's be honest, with that senior center the other day. We basically said, this is a great idea. And because she said, well, what are you gonna do about it?
I was on trial.
And the answer is, it's not, we talked about this kind of stuff. We got a 3-year plan, we'll put it in the file, we'll look at it, but it's, so it's not something we're gonna work on right now.
and we said about that, we're going to get the statewide Council on Aging director in there to tell us how other towns do this.
But that
And,
was a,
well, we really are going to do that, and we've started asking other towns how they do it, and we're getting that information in. But I don't think, I mean, I want to be honest about this. I don't think we're going to be putting one in the capital plan for fiscal '20,
yeah.
because there's already hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of items in there.
It's already 6 roundabouts.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's prioritizing us, it's giving us focus.
Sorry, Mike, I had to do that.
It's not just town admin, it's town departments too. The town departments come up with their strategic plans.
Oh, yeah.
I've had lots of department heads say, this helps me kind of structure where we're going forward. A lot of it aligns and it helps us.
Which was the.
Yeah, Dawn?
I mean, I look at these as very much being proactive goals, the way we've written them.
Uh-huh.
They're not the reactive things, like we do have to do something about the island home, like we do have to do something about like things that are crumbling and things that are coming at us on a daily basis. These are, how do we get ahead of knowing that like with the waste options contracts up in 2025, how do we focus to get ahead and prioritize these things over the things that are constantly thrown?
And I think that's because that's what I was asking you, Jason, that's the way to say it. Because I think if it ends up being a way to filter and just ignore stuff,
Yeah, I
then,
don't want that.
then that's not, that wasn't a goal. It's to, so that has to be you have to say it like she just said it.
I mean, I might add to Don's, these are really foundational issues to the community. I mean, they cross every age bracket, every sector of Nantucket,
I think it's, there'll be probably a lot of talk and explaining of, because we have these foundational goals, that's a good way to put it, that the landfill affects everyone, waste affects everyone, housing, environment, right?
Yeah.
It affects everyone, transportation. And a marijuana regulation might not affect particularly everyone, right? Or even Island Home, or feasibility studies, they all are important and they don't go away.
Right.
It's just, we're all trying to prioritize our time.
I'm sure you're thinking about it, but at some point, we should talk about, or you'll talk about how to present this to the ORME or to Mary Ann. Whether that's, because it's important that we get good, that we get coverage for that. And whether I don't know if you want to do it ahead of time, or the morning of, or something, but.
Can I mention one thing sort of related to that? Just, so I'm sure you're aware of Jim, you were at the meeting with the Land Bank and the Boston Globe, and I had sent a letter to the Globe, which they published last Sunday. They've contacted me today saying one of their they might write an editorial about things here. I don't know what that means, but
I might
Yeah.
point them to
Yeah.
folks here.
Yeah.
I just want to put it on your radar.
Good point.
So next steps, does the board want the process to convene the work groups and to continue working on identifying data and action steps and
Yeah, who's
filling
gonna
this
do
thing
it?
out?
I think we need to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, so environment, Wilbur needs to meet again, right? And transportation?
No, there's
Think we're
still a
good?
bit of work to do. All of these things have to be done.
We have to figure out who's doing what.
Yeah.
These three things here, you mean? The specific strategies, the action steps, and the evaluation monitoring process?
Yeah.
And assigning people to do what,
Right,
and
and-
identifying additional resources, that
Who's
kind of
going to collect the
exactly.
data, who's going to look
WPI.
at it and report back on it, all those assignments need to be made. within this.
Timeframes, yeah.
So I think we're going to have to, you and I and Chuck and Greg, figure out when the work groups are going to get back together. And that's certainly not going to be before June 20th. It could maybe be before June 20th, but I don't know that we're going to have a chance to collect it all and report back out in a
Right.
board meeting
And that's not
before.
going to be part of the presentation.
Right.
It's going to be a bigger
It-
picture.
It's just going to keep on
Yep.
moving. So maybe what we ought to do is, just to keep us on track, focused here, I'm sort of wondering out loud, do we get the work groups to have met and come up with some more by a certain date and then report back to the board at a meeting like this? Do we set that date now?
Well, we know the environmental group
Do we
needs
want
to
to, do we
meet.
want to meet, this group meet before that, or I think was kind of what I started with was, are we delegating this group? And then, but about it, you said, well, we haven't really assigned that, but I think that's what we're talking about now,
Yeah.
how to do that.
Right, exactly.
And does this group want to give them, spend some time at a next meeting to give them more guidance, fill in some of the blanks, or just have them go ahead and meet and come back to us with thoughts? I don't have a preference on that.
I think, just process-wise, the work groups should meet again at least once more each and review what we heard here today, and then get at items number 2, 3, and 4 here, and then just try to maybe even, sketch out these things to come back to the board, make sure they're on the right track, at least.
And I think that work can continue before the presentation, because
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah.
topic has,
I'm just
been
thinking
defined.
of timing
Yeah.
there, and I'm looking at my calendar, and it's not empty between now
are you
and then.
busy?
But
And that's
that
why I
doesn't
said,
mean,
maybe that, so we meet every 2 weeks, right? This group?
We have been,
Yes,
yes.
So I don't know if we have a meeting scheduled after this, but those are already in place, so we can,
well, are they?
oh, I don't
We
know.
haven't
assume we
scheduled
will.
them out.
Going forward, we
Yeah.
haven't,
Yeah.
that's what we're
Right.
talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so what I'm sort of getting at is maybe we schedule a board meeting to hear back from the work groups on a date certain now, but it isn't going to be in 2 weeks, because I don't think we're going to get all together. But it could be in a month, it could be at the end of June.
So let's figure out when the work groups can meet, once that's set, and we can figure out when
Yeah, that makes
this
sense.
group can meet.
So should you and I and Don try to hash over the
Yep.
board meeting date when we have a little more information
Yes.
about when the, okay.
And do you want the four of us to talk about the work groups, or should I just start scheduling something?
I guess just start.
We're gonna, the four of us are gonna
Okay.
meet about the work group dates.
Good.
That's what you think, Chuck?
So the only one does the environmental group have to meet before the 20th because we have to figure out the second goal?
Iron out that goal,
Yeah,
but we won't be able to meet before then.
right. This group won't be able to.
Yeah, it's my sense we should schedule that one right away.
Okay, that's the only one that
At least that one.
should meet before the 20th.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
If
okay.
possible.
Yep.
I think that's all that we had for process.
Well, number 3, we have feedback on today's session.
Great.
I don't like saying this to Rita.
What?
I thought it went well.
I think everybody got a chance to say what they wanted to say. I think we validated the importance of having the subject matter experts in these smaller groups participate. I think we've been listening to them and reflecting that in our revision of our goals, and I think that's good. Those are my comments.
think we're all still focused.
What's that?
I think we're all still focused in the same direction. It's easier to talk about it now,
Yeah.
except for environment.
So at the next board meeting, you're going to hear back from the work groups as to their updated information, and I think you're going to hear back about the meeting that the chairs and the vice chairs are having with planning board and planning commission? Okay.
And why can't we choose that meeting now, schedule that now?
We're trying to see when all the work groups can meet first. So they can report back.
That's why it is so good.
But am I hearing Jim say he wants to hear the feedback from the planning boards before the 20th?
No, Libby just.
No, I didn't say before the 20th. I just said at the next board meeting,
We could,
beyond the 20th,
Right.
that they're going to hear back from all the work groups anyway. We'll just tack that on.
we could say something potentially about the meeting on Thursday at next week's regular selectmen's
Yeah.
meeting under committee report.
That's true.
That's true.
Maybe it doesn't have to be
Yep.
waiting till
Or
then.
just if there's something
That's right.
worthwhile to
Sure.
report.
Chuck, you good with everything? Jamie? Anybody else? You raise your hand, Don?
No.
You clapping? All right, motion to adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.